What is up, everybody? We're going to talk about how to reduce the oil prices through agriculture. Now, I'm going to do this video outside. However, it's kind of cold outside right now. I also wanted to do this video in spring, but a little groundhog told me that's going to be a little whiles away. So I'm doing it now. What we're going to talk about in this video, I should say, are mainly just the cattle industry, which is beef or dairy, chicken industry, and the swine industry. Now, this can be done with any herbivore. Doesn't have to be cows. It can be done with chickens or turkeys, but in the swine you have to use pigs. Sorry. So, what most farmers think, trying to remember here, is you have to, in order to make money, you have to have as many animals in a smaller area to grow them faster, bigger, cheaper. That works. However, you're not seeing the amount of acreage it takes to grow the feed, which means they're probably using petroleum-based fertilizer. They're burning diesel fuel to harvest it. They're burning diesel fuel to transport it from the field to the mill. And they're burning diesel fuel to transport it from the mill back to the farm to feed your animals. So they're using a lot of diesel fuel in that sense, and the manure has to be hauled off somewhere using more diesel fuel. So they're using a lot of diesel fuel in this sense. Okay? A lot of diesel fuel. Whereas a pasture-fed animal, when a cow goes out onto a pasture, it eats grass. So, therefore, you're not transporting in feed for the cow because it's eating grass. The manure in the confinement animal feeding operation will get hauled off somewhere, but in the manure in a pasture feeding operation, just goes back into the pasture while the cow's eating. Poops, manure is onto the pasture already. So now, when the cow leaves, a lot of people think that I have to sanitize the pasture with some type of insecticide or herbicide. Yeah, insecticide and stuff like that. Well, what you can do is bring in chickens. Chicken, bok, bok, bok. Chickens will scratch through the manure, eat the bugs, the grubs, the earthworms. Ultimately sanitizing the pasture, spreading out the manure so you don't have to change ragged. So now you got this biologically active pasture that is growing grass to feed cattle, that is producing feed for chickens. Now, you still have to bring in grain to feed the chickens. Okay? They're omnivores. So, you do have to bring in grain to feed chickens, but you don't have to bring in as much. Now, in the swine industry, if you have woods, and then you can put the pigs out into the woods, and they're tearing up the ground. I know they'll tear it up, but in that tearing up, they're creating a disturbance in the soil to activate this genetic restart button, this microbiological restart button in the soil, hereby aerating the soil, creating a more diverse forest floor, which produces more growth for the trees. So now, not only do you have this once in a blue moon harvest for the trees, when you harvest the dead out first for the firewood, I should say, not clear cut. You harvest dead out first. So you have a once in a blue moon harvest from the forest, but you have an annual cash flow of the pigs. So now the forest does not have to justify itself. It justifies itself and a home for the pigs. And you're not bringing in a bunch of food that has to be used petroleum to grow it, to harvest it, to transport it, to mill it. Everything's already there. Now in the wintertime, the soil goes to sleep. The microbes, the fungi, the earthworms, the nuts, the grubs, it goes to sleep. So what do? Well, for an herbivore or a cow, you have a small area big enough for them to roam around, and a standalone structure with a feed trough, and I guess a bedding thing. I'm not entirely sure. So it's going to spend most of that time next to the feed trough because it's eating. You throw down bedding, which is either old leaves, old hay, sawdust, wood chips, peanut hulls, something carbon. Throw that down, and a lot of you are going to think, wait a minute, I'm creating compost pile, which requires me to have a compost turner, which burns a lot of diesel fuel. Stay with me here. Underneath the bedding pack, put in corn on top of the manure. As the herbivore or the cow comes in, tromps out the oxygen, corn starts to ferment. Do that every layer. Okay. When the cow or the herbivore comes out in the spring to eat the grass that comes up, go in with the pigs. Pigs turn it, seeking out the fermented corn because they love fermented corn. As they do, they turn it several times, which turns it from a anaerobic to aerobic compost pile. When the pigs come out, then you can clean the paddock or the barn out, use the compost to grow more hay, to feed more cows in the winter. Okay. Now what about the chickens? Same thing. Except for you don't have to throw in corn. Or use the pigs. Put down bedding. Keeps them busy. They scratch through it, aerate it themselves, then produce nitrogen through their manure. And then when they come out back onto this eggmobile or pasture, you can grow in and you can plant corn, tomatoes, vegetables to ultimately sell to have more income, or you can grow in with corn and soybean to feed back to the chickens and the pigs. You can also do this around the area where your herbivore or cow was staying for the winter. So now you only have a self-sustaining farm, and you've lowered your amount of oil you need, thereby putting more money into the farmer's pocket, and you've extended the run-out date to another day or so. Actually, oh wow, I shouldn't say another day, really. You've extended the run-out date. That's it. I'll be back with another video on this series as soon as I can. See ya.